Wrong with yours?
Yeah.
Was it an easy fix?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I just want to go over a few like potential obstacles that might come up, or not obstacles, but like maybe glitches, things not appearing. Let me make this a sun RX180. So I have just a plane here with a hair, and like we're seeing it. Maybe I'll just cut the to 100 or something. So we're seeing our hair, but if you're messing with the hair cycle settings, trying to make it thicker or whatever, if this shape thing is kind of interesting. By default, it's set to 0, and what's happening now is actually not very realistic for hair. The hair strands, it's really hard to see, but they're almost going up in a really tall, like, triangle. Now, if you set this to be like all the way to 1, it looks like I just cut the hair. But what's really happening, if you increase the root even more maybe, what's actually happening is, I'm going to turn that down a bit. The shape of those hairs are like, they're curved more, like that. So if your root isn't big enough, and if this is really strong, your hair might not be showing up. Let's go back to 1. Like you might think you have hair that's this long or even longer. You're like, oh, I have really long, beautiful hair. And then you go to render it and it's like, what's happening? It's being lopped off somewhere. And that's because of this shape. So what hair actually kind of looks like is you want to turn that to the negative, or even like grass. And what's happening with this, if you go into the negatives, it goes like straight up and then kind of clips it at the top. And I think our hair kind of looks like that. Try pulling a hair and looking at the end of it, and you're getting. So this is when the shape is in the positives. It gives it that curve, and when it's in the negatives, it's more of just a straight line. Yeah. Okay. So that's one thing that you might want to mess around with. Let me get rid of those. The other thing is, this isn't really a troubleshooting thing, but it's like something you could play around with. I'm just going to animate this ball a little bit, just on the location. I'm just moving it around and hitting I to insert a keyframe. So now we have a ball that moves. And I haven't really messed around with this much, but it's a feature that Blender has, and it seems pretty cool. Let's just cut our hair by quite a bit. You can turn on this hair dynamics, and now I think as the ball moves, the hair moves too. And there's all these like settings here, which I am not an expert on, but I'm guessing air drag. If you hover over it, it'll actually kind of tell you. It says air has some thickness, which slows falling things down. So I'm guessing if I bump that up to 10, it'll slow it down. It's not falling as quick. So that's a cool thing to make it look like some type of jellyfish type thing. If I turn that to 0, this is like how I learned, or this is how pretty much anybody with Blender learns. Nobody knows what these things do, and then they just drag them around and like, oh, this does that. So I'm not going to waste your time pretending like I know, because I don't. But this hair dynamics seems like an awesome feature. It would be cool to, like, if you have a cool haircut, to figure out a way to make it so it kind of maintains its haircut, but you know, kind of bounces a little bit, like as if there's some gel in it or something. Something to play around with. So another cool thing about this hair feature is, like, let's say I'm making a scene and I want like a bunch of rocks littering the ground. So what you can do is like go to another layer, and like I'm just going to start with a cube. I'm going to subdivide. I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier, and I'm going to bump the views up. So now it's like a really smooth sphere looking thing. And like let's add a displace modifier. I need to give it a texture, so I'm going to hit new, and then over here this automatically opens the texture that you're looking at. Let's give it something like that. Increase the size a little bit. Okay, yeah, sure, that's a fine rock. If I switch the displacement to global, every time I move this rock, it's going to like change its shape. So let's just make a few rocks. Look at that. I'm making all sorts of rocks, and I'm not really doing anything. Okay. So we have all these rocks, right? Let's say I want them to appear on this plane. If I go to hair, I can make all of those hairs become a rock. But I don't need 1,000 just for this example, or 200. Well, let's do 1,000. One thing also to keep in mind, well, basically it's just like using an emitter. You can set it to be an object or a group. I'm not going to do that quite yet because this is a pretty good illustration. Rocks wouldn't be spread out evenly like this. So if you go to textures down here, you can also give this emission, like it's all emitting from the faces, but you can apply a texture so it emits kind of inconsistently. So in this textures drop-down menu, I'm going to hit new, and if I click this little button here, I'm going to now be modifying this texture, not like my displacement texture. And let's also give this one a Varani. And if you scroll to the bottom, it's like you get to choose what you're influencing, and we want to influence the density of the hair. And let's let me increase in the colors, let me increase the contrast, so, and maybe increase the size. So what's going on here? Anytime there's black, like these black balls, nothing will show up there. Anytime there's white, they will show up there. So you can start creating some variety just in how you adjust this texture. So like, let's say that's where I want my rocks to go. So I'm going to go to my rocks, I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to turn them into a group, because if I just choose an object for the emission, for the particle system to look at, it'll only choose one thing, but I'm going to choose all of them. So first I have to group them with Control G, and I'm just going to give them a name to help stay organized. I'm going to call them rocks. And now I'm going to click my particle system, go to the particle tab, and choose group. And I get to choose a group, and I'm going to say rocks. And so now all of a sudden I have these like rocks littering the ground. So you can use these hair particle systems to do work for you in a way. Like I modeled some rocks, and now I'm using the particle system to spread the rocks across the ground. A couple things to keep in mind though. Notice how the rocks are like half above ground and half under. In this case, that works for me. It gives some variety. But what's happening is the emitter starts from the origin point. So normally what I would do, like if I wanted leaves on the ground or something, I would make sure my origins are at the bottom of like the leaf. So I would just like drag this one up. So there. And I'm in edit mode, so I'm kind of moving the origins. When I drag the object, the origin kind of sticks where it was at. And now I'm making sure when I go back to the emitter, let's see. It could be one of those things where you have to just like update the cache. Maybe not. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. So keep it in mind, those should be correct. But anyways, a couple of features. So the point is, you want to keep track of that origin point, because where that origin point is defines where it's emitted from. Now I have this like random size value, and I can change the size of the rocks if I want. The rotation, you can turn this on so it looks at the rotation of your rocks. But let's do one more example real quick. That's also pretty cool. So we have a plane. I'm going to add an emitter, some hair, and just do like 30. And I've modeled some buildings already, so I'm going to append a group into this scene. So if you go File, Append, and this is what I did with Kira's. I started a new project. I went to like my desktop, and I'm just going to append this building models file. If you click it, you get to dig inside that file and see all the different things, all the materials I made, but I also made a group called buildings. So I'm going to open that and hit append, and let me move it to a different layer. So I already have a group of buildings, and they look pretty cool. Those were just like free textures I got from online. And I'm going to assign it to this hair. So, and probably won't work at first, but let's say group buildings. So in this case, all the buildings have like, they're all facing down. And if I turn on rotation, it doesn't do anything. If I go up, turn on advanced and look at rotation up here, it's not doing anything. But what you can do is select your group. It's kind of weird. So I just have this group selected, but if you rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees, for some reason the particles and the mesh, the y and x-axis are not like reading the same way. So anyways, if you rotate them by 90, and let's increase our particles, you can then down here and just, let's see. Yeah, let's see. So the emission geometry, I can do that. I can add some like, don't want to add that, but yeah. So all of a sudden now we have like kind of a cool cityscape. There's some issues with like things overlapping. The way around that is if you have this set to vertices, and I can see that up here, this little plane that I subdivided only has 81 vertices. So I would set this to like 81. And now I'm like, they're only emitting from the vertices. You can like delete some vertices if you want to make a road. There's a tutorial online about this that's pretty cool, and I can link to that. Now there's 75. Well, anyways, I think it's pretty cool. So if you have any questions about, yeah, like there's some overlap going on here, but this stuff could be fixed with just a little bit of work. So if you have questions about stuff like that, there's a lot of tutorials online, and I'll put some on Blackboard.